Okay. Now we can talk.
So this is Car Policy Episode 3.
Question before we start. What are we talking about?
That's a good question.
But this is Car Policy Episode 3, and this is actually a really cool one because we've talked a little bit about Mint, we've talked about Sixtus a little bit, talked a little bit about the embezzlement, but people might be wondering, like, why am I sitting here with Collin and Sam? Who are these guys, and how have we been together for 12 years? That's a theme of this podcast, I think, is this 12 years of history. But how does that come to be? And I think it's actually one of the coolest stories probably of my life is how we're all sitting here today. And it all kind of starts from, so back in 2012, it was like January 2012. I was in Germany at the time, and life wasn't going so well. I had been running Sixtus for about a year and a half, and it just wasn't going. I was having a hard time. Even though I had the deal with Travel Channel of China, I was running low on cash again. I had spent my investment money. I had paid my tuition. I had been in China for about half a year at this point, and I was just running out of cash. And so I started looking at, like, okay, I'm going to have to put my resume together. I went back home to Germany where my parents were living, and I was sitting there, feeling a little sorry for myself because I was like, man, I built a lot of this stuff. I have this contract. I have these, all these pieces together, but none of the advertisers that are the real money behind this thing are kind of really partnering with me. And so I was really struggling with that. And so it was January 2012, and I got a call from a guy in China, just completely out of the blue. And he goes, I saw bits about your television show idea. And he worked at a company called Mindshare. And he goes, listen, I think that this would be a perfect fit for a brand that I represent, and it's Ford. How do you feel about coming to China and talking to me and Ford about sponsoring your television series? And it was one of the biggest moments of my life where I was like, holy crap, I cannot believe that Ford, the car company, out of all these companies that I've been pitching the last year and a half, they're actually interested in sponsoring my television show as the primary sponsor. And so I ended up
a moment of hope.
Huge moment of hope. And so I ended up borrowing a few bucks and got myself back on a plane to China. And I'm sitting back in China, and I was usually I would stay with Jean and her family. But at this time, a buddy of mine in London, Dale, was like, man, I kept complaining to him about how I was bored and I was living outside of Beijing in the middle of nowhere. And I said, man, I just need to have more of a better experience in China. And he goes, well, why are you not you should move into a youth hostel. And my buddy Dale was living at a youth hostel in London, even though he's like a high powered lawyer. He was like, hey, I'm having the time of my life right now. I'm like 30 years old or 35. And I said, well, I'm not youth anymore. I shouldn't be hanging out at a youth hostel. And he goes, trust, everything's different in places, like outside the United States. You would fit in very well at a youth hostel in China. So I went to this little computer lab and I saw all the different kinds of hostels in the area, and I found the one that's kind of the primary one in Beijing, and I was like, this is the one for me. And I went to click on it, and I kind of slipped with the mouse, and I accidentally booked the other. There was it's kind of a top 3 youth hostels, and I ended up booking the second choice. And it was a youth hostel called Sanli Tun Youth Hostel. And so I moved in there the very next day, and sure enough, I had the best time there. Within a couple hours of being there, I'm sitting on the couches in the front room. I'm meeting all these people from all over the world, British people and Italians and Serbians. It was just like this whole mix of Europeans. And so it was like this breath of fresh air and life again. And I'm like, okay, I'm here. I'm working on this Travel Channel deal. I'm working on the Ford deal. And now I'm meeting all these people in this youth hostel. And the very first guy I remember meeting was this guy named Ryan. And actually, I met his girlfriend first. I heard this English accent from across from where I was sitting, and I was like, "Oh, I'm going to go talk to her." And she goes, "Oh, me and my boyfriend are living here in China, trying to do some work." And I got to know her boyfriend a little bit. Really cool guy, and he was a white British guy who spoke Chinese. And I said, I actually am looking specifically for your skill set of Europeans, Americans that speak Chinese. And I said, you want to come and work for me in California? And sure enough, I hired Ryan, and I did. I brought him to California, and he ended up living there for pretty much, I think, the next year of his life. And then there was this.
I wonder if that could happen in 2024 because everyone can go online and do deep dives on everyone so easily now. And if depending on what your presence online would have been, I mean, if let's say you weren't big on social media, someone might not think of you as credible and be like, oh, this guy, and then sharing with friends, hey, what do you think about this? I got this offer to go all the way to California. Yeah. Is this legit? No. I just don't know if that would work today. But good for you to be in a space and time when none of that tech was really there yet.
Yeah.
You could kind of live in anonymity and people can take your word for it.
Yeah, that's how the whole thing was. Is it was a discussion, and I still didn't have I didn't have really any cash at this point, and I just had this kind of plan. But the whole time that I was at this youth hostel in China, it was about a 2-month time period. Every day I would leave the hostel and I'd go over to Mindshare and I'd work on the presentations to Ford, and I actually went and pitched Ford, and the whole group of the Ford executives were all there with my kind of agent from Mindshare. Kevin, and we ended up. It was the craziest thing. We're there sitting at this boardroom in Pudong in Shanghai, for one of the meetings with the Ford Motor Company of China, and I was going to go there to this meeting by myself, and so I actually ended up calling a couple of my friends from business school who were Chinese, and I was like, "Hey, can you make this whole thing just seem a little bit bigger by coming with me?" And so my friends James and Lily show up at the board meeting, and they actually asked and put together some great questions, and so all of a sudden I'm sitting there pitching Ford and going and got the deal. So I'm going back to the youth hostel. And I'm celebrating with people at the youth hostel, and I'm taking them all to go eat some pizza. And that's, I think, where I extended the job to Ryan and said, hey, man, you want to come and work for me in Los Angeles on this company? It's going to be a real thing now, because now at this point I've got the Ford deal coming together, and I had the Travel Channel deal coming together. And that very first day that I was at the youth hostel, I met this girl from New Jersey. And this girl from New Jersey, from Westwood, New Jersey, had been traveling the world for the previous year. And she was in my, so you have these dorm rooms, and there were like 12 people in a dorm. And so I heard these 2 American girls in my room, and right when I had moved in, and I heard their accents, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. You're Americans. How about we go hang out tonight? And so I took the 2 girls out for also to the pizza place, Crow's Nest in Beijing. If anybody wants to try it, it's phenomenal. But I took these 2 girls there, and I found out in the taxi going over there that this girl, Alex, had been a Mindshare employee back in New York City before her trip started. And I thought that was hugely coincidental because Mindshare is a pretty small company. And I thought, okay, why don't I should probably extend a job offer to her, because I would love to have an inside scoop into Mindshare. And she was really cool as well. And so within the first 24 hours or so of being at this youth hostel in China, I met Ryan and I met Alex, and I offered them both jobs. And well,
Santa Brian.
Well, sometimes
you get a job. You get a job. Everyone gets jobs.
Yeah, no, there was a while there that I was handing out probably too many jobs along the way, but hiring Ryan and hiring Alex were 2 of the 2 greatest hires I made at that point. And so sure enough, Ryan and Alex both flew out to Los Angeles. So I ended up making the deal happen for Ford. We got the funding from Ford, also got a large amount of investment at the same time. So I went from having nothing in Germany in kind of December, January of 2012. And by March, April, I had closed the Ford deal, closed the Travel Channel deal, and brought in a large amount of investment. Up until recently, it was the most investment I'd ever brought in. And so I went from having nothing to all of a sudden a company in Los Angeles. And sure enough, Ryan and Alex both flew out from their trips and from China to move to Los Angeles and work at the company. So they were two of my very first employees at Sixtus.
And now Alex is your sister-in-law.
There we go.
What?
Which is insane.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy that that was 2012. And then 3 years later, I was given a speech at my brother's wedding because my brother married that girl, Alex, from the youth hostel.
The youth hostel that you incorrectly clicked on, it was the wrong hostel.
Yeah.
The butterfly
insane.
effect.
Yeah,
So
it's incredible.
crazy.
But what was really nice is, so when I brought out Alex to Los Angeles, and Ryan as well, I said to, we're trying to actually hire a lot more people at this point, and I guess the producer had gone to both of them and said, "Hey, do you guys know anybody that would be helpful in various elements of our production?" And Alex said she knew this guy from Westwood, New Jersey, that she'd kind of grown up living around. Didn't know him super well, from what I understand, but was like friends with, there was a closeness there somewhere. And so she ends up recommending this guy who had just moved out to Santa Monica named Collin Newman. And that's who's sitting right
that
here.
was just a total coincidence because she didn't like voluntarily recommend me. When I moved out there, I knew that she was one of two people that I knew that was who were living in Los Angeles. So I was just looking for a job. I was 24. I just did it's not an original story. I was working in New York City for a little while in the advertising industry, and I was 24, and I was like, okay, I've always wanted to check out Cali, which you don't say when you live in Cali, but you do say if you're from the East Coast. And I wanted to just do it. I was like, this is now or never. And I went. I was fed up with the concrete jungle, the rat race in New York City.
Where were you working at in New York?
I was at MTV. I was in the advertising sales department. And so it was the problem, how I could summarize the issue that I had working there is that it felt like it could have been at any company, anywhere. I wanted something uniquely MTV, uniquely creative, music-based, movie-based. They had a lot going on at MTV, and I was pigeonholed there. And that's just because I'd had an internship there the year before. And the internship was great because I was able to have a lot more freedom and create my own projects and be creative. But then that was my only way in the next year after graduating. And then I felt stuck there. And then having this kind of realization, this epiphany of, there's over 10,000 people in this company. I can do anything here if I really wanted to. Just got to put myself out there. I started taking all these informational interviews around the company, but the problem was I was doing it in secret. And so my direct supervisors took a lot of issue with that. And I'm, in my mind, I'm like, don't you want to have a team that is optimized for your particular mission skill set for that department? Like, wouldn't you rather me go do something that I am better suited for and have somebody replace me who's better suited for this? But that's a whole other can of worms. Sorry for that. But anyway, that was, I just had a really bad taste in my mouth with New York and that kind of culture of the tri-state area of what success meant. And I just wanted to see what else was out there. Honestly, I was just feeling very, very risky. And I went out and back to connect Brian's stories that I'd been in LA for a couple of days, and I just called, I Facebook messaged Alex and said, hey, I know we haven't really hung out all that much, but would love to get together and pick your brain. What are you doing for work? You're like,
That's so cool.
I need to find work. I became disillusioned after 3 days working for a wine distributor, going to convenience stores at 4:30 in the morning, setting up displays. And I was like, this sucks. This ain't for me. So Alex was like, oh my gosh, it's so weird. I could probably find that correspondence.
Yeah, that'd be awesome to find.
It's so weird that so I'm paraphrasing, that you're reaching out. It's such good timing. I've been looking for people. She goes, this job has to do with film and China and film production. She goes, trust me, wink, wink. You don't have to have experience in any of those things. You just have to be. This is kind of.
I'm just only finding this out right now. I wish I would have known. No.
That's so funny.
You know what I'm realizing as I'm saying the story is that this is what life is. you fake it till you make it, honestly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that in all aspects of life. And particularly in this case, given that it was a relatively low position I was going for, you really just need to be excited and willing to learn and able to retain information. And she's like, come into the office for this interview. It's an obligatory interview. We just need to present it as if I'm interviewing you, but we both know that you have the job.
So there's
already.
a wink already between you and Alex.
Yeah. So I walk
incredible.
in, and so she's like, "Here's the address. It's 1650 whatever
3
Blue Jay Way, at the top of the Hollywood Hills. Just come in tomorrow and we'll talk. But you have the job. Trust me. We know your family. Your family knows our family. You have the job." So I go up there.
That's amazing.
And I go in and I'm just blown away because there's Chinese executives on this couch in suits and ties. There's a lot of buzz in the kitchen because there's production meetings going on. There's people from all walks of life. I'm hearing Chinese. I'm hearing English. I'm hearing English accents. I don't know what's going on. And she's like, just walk through with me, follow me. And I remember meeting your brother at the time. It's just, hey, Shane, hey, good to meet you. Good to meet you. Boom, boom, boom. And I get escorted by her through the main area, down to the backyard and onto the pool house, which had this $1 million view.
Unbelievable
And
view.
She's sitting there with me, and she's basically giggling because she's like, "You have this job, you know," because again, we have this trust. I know who you are. I know where you come from. I know you can probably do this job. But she goes, we just have to be here, sitting here, and making it look like we're interviewing right now, and because there were huge windows all over the place. The office where everyone was stationed could see out onto the pool hall, the pool house deck where we were sitting. And so we just did that for a little while. And basically, the rest is history.
So essentially, my hiring practices were not up to
No.
snuff.
Not great.
It got lost along the way, Brian, clearly, because just 1-2 degree separation from you, who's Alex from your brother,
Yeah.
was hiring incorrectly.
Yeah,
She was against.
No, it's actually all me, man,
Policy.
because that's the thing is I didn't know Ryan and Alex at all. I barely knew them. I just thought these people are there's something great about them.
And
I
you're
wanted-
right.
Totally right. They're both phenomenal people. One of them's now my sister-in-law. It's the craziest thing ever. And so that's the thing is when you're hiring, hiring people is such a challenge because you really don't know. You can do all the background checks, you can do all the interviews, you can all do endless, references or whatever, and you really don't know how somebody's going to be until they're actually working there for at least like 3 to 6 months. Then stuff starts to come out. You start discovering who they are, what their aptitudes are. And so people like Ryan and Alex, I just met both of them in a youth hostel.
You had a gut feeling.
And I had a monster
You had a gut feeling.
gut feeling about these two people. Like it was immediate. Like I actually have a really cool video that I should pull out at some point. It's actually where I met and took Alex to that pizza place in Beijing. I have a video of me sitting at the pizza bar with Alex and talking to her. And it's from like the very first day I met her, but here I meet this girl, meet this guy, hire them both, bring them out to California. And now the two of them have completely, changed my life. So not only did Alex marry my brother and now they have, beautiful child, but, Alex introduced me to Collin. She brought Collin in. And I didn't know who Collin was for that first couple months. I think I saw him sitting in the office at one point, walking by. I only have this one memory of Collin. If you sitting at kind of the big circular desk, and I walked by, and somebody goes, "Oh, that's a new guy, Collin." And so I said, like, "Hey, man, you having a good time here?" Blah blah blah, something like that.
I probably said yes. Meanwhile, I was scared shitless.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to think back.
Imposter
to that.
syndrome. You're like, what am I? I don't belong here.
But I remember thinking you were a really nice, really cool guy. And I remember the others, like Shane and Alex, were saying, okay, this guy, we're going to want to have him around for a long time. He's a good guy. And so I knew kind of who their favorites were that they were hiring and bringing in. And sure enough, man, that was, 12 years ago. And we've been, nearly inseparable in all that time. Like, it's crazy. Like after that, like after the company fell apart, Collin was very instrumental in kind of helping with the embezzlement and trying to overcome that.
Overcome the embezzlement, not the embezzlement itself.
Thank you.
clarification.
Semantics are everything.
Never stolen money from any company ever. Just want to make that clear.
Yeah, no, but Collin was very instrumental in the investigation and kind of putting closure on a lot of that. And then I was completely broke at that time, and Collin, I ended up moving in to a house with him in North Hollywood, and that's kind of where the friendship really started.
Yeah, we had a spare room in the house. You'd reached out to me. It'd been when you moved in there. How long had it been between the time of Sixtus 1.0 falling apart and you moving into Blythe Street, North Hollywood?
Yeah, no, it was while I was Ubering. So I'd gone through all the stuff with like the FBI and the embezzlement and the legal stuff and the court stuff. It was, it would have been probably, it was less than a year.
Was that before or after you went back to, or you went to work at Nike?
It was before.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'd finished Sixtus 1.0. I really consider falling apart like kind of March of 2013. And it was by December of kind of 2013 that I was living at the North Hollywood place, and I was driving the Uber car. And it was like the biggest humble pie that here's this guy I just hired like a year before, and now I'm like living in a room in his house with him. And funny enough, the other guy that we were living with was the bass player for Puddle of Mud.
Puddle of Mud. Just a very typical Los Angeles story.
Yeah, so bizarre.
These weird things that occur, but it just shows how quickly things can change.
Yeah. So instantly I went from, not knowing who Collin was to all of a sudden we're living in the same house and, talking a lot and kind of getting to know him. And we went to a Chinese conference thing together that I took you to.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
That's a great picture. I like that picture.
Yeah. That's early days. So, but anyways, so a little, going back to the kind of the core of the story is in that youth hostel. So that was all through Alex that I met Collin. But that guy, Ryan, that I met and hired, brought him out. After we started the production, we needed somebody to be a location scout. And I had a hunch of who I wanted, but the producer, I'd given him full control over the production, and we had this kind of separations thing where I wasn't going to get involved in anything dealing with the production. That was going to be a hands-off thing. And I was just going to focus on kind of the running of the company, CEO kind of stuff, fundraising and deal making and that sort of thing. But the producer was only going to focus on the production. I wouldn't touch it. And so I had wanted my cousin to go and be the location scout.
Why would you want your cousin to do it?
Because my cousin is a phenomenal photographer.
That makes sense.
She's amazing. She's got a huge following on social media, and it all started back there in 2012. That's when she was like the OG Instagram influencer.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
She was getting sponsorship deals from companies back in 2012 as like a 19-year-old.
Gosh.
Wow.
And so I was like, she's experienced. She knows what she's doing. She's amazing and talented. We should pay her to go across the country. And because the location scouting for this television show was actually pretty complex. It was required going from Los Angeles all the way to Key West. Mm-hmm. And then do you remember how many different?
Countless. It took about 3 weeks or so.
So a 3-week long trip across the country, and we were looking to hire somebody. And so
it's quite an ambitious first show to want to film.
Crazy.
Especially for a pilot. Right?
Insane.
Wasn't that the pilot?
No, I'd already done the pilot 2 years.
This is going to be the first season.
I'd done the pilot about a year and a half before,
which secured all of the
funding,
and the distribution and the sponsorships.
Yes,
to then allow you to then go ahead and then have the resources to then be able to go and film the first season, and write it, and staff it, and shoot it, and edit it, and air it.
Yeah, precisely. So after I'd raised that little bit of money from kind of my classmates and people at Cambridge in the kind of 2010, 2011 time period, I went and actually filmed a pilot in California with Jeremy and a few other people. And we actually made a really cool pilot. And that's what got us the funding, the distribution, the advertising, and all of it.
We're going to have to show that or post that somewhere on YouTube.
We have
eventually.
You mean the original pilot?
Absolutely.
I love the original pilot. It still makes me happy.
It's so great.
It's so good.
Uses one of the greatest songs of all time.
It does. Mm-hmm. It does.
Which song?
What's it called?
Steve Jablonsky, I Am Lincoln.
So good.
It's the best song for something like that.
I Am Lincoln.
Yeah. Yeah, it's from the island.
Such a good feeling.
Such a great feeling about it. It's got like this very majestic vibe to it. But anyways, so I go and turn over all this kind of power to the producer, and he's going to go and hire a location scout to go and why. I don't know why we made it so complex and the first time we'd ever done anything like this.
Because that's what the production handbooks told us to do. I mean, we were going based on how we thought production should be conducted. No.
And well, everything also got bigger because I'd had the deal with Travel Channel and Ford, but it was when the U.S. government came in there was a group called Brand USA. I think they're still there. It's the marketing arm under the Department of Commerce to increase tourism into the United States. And so they have a very large budget at the time. I think 2012, it was like $100 million that they were going to spend to increase tourism. So they wanted to do all these initiatives. And I went and pitched the idea of, if you want Chinese tourists to come into the country, you should use my television show as the medium to do that. It's the best kind of bang for your buck, highest possible ROI you would ever have. And they agreed. And so the agreement was a $4 million deal to increase tourism by me highlighting all these different places across the United States. And so I went to Brand USA and I was like, here are all these different ideas I have. What do you guys want? And they came back and said, actually, we have a list of all these different cities and locations we'd like to have you film that have to do with states that have paid into their overall fund. So that's how this thing got more complex. Is not only were they putting $4 million into the project, but they also were giving us a more extensive list of locations. And so it went from being like a little tiny web series into a little television show into a monster production.
And then that has to influence the writing, because now we have to incorporate Oklahoma City into the story somehow.
Yeah, the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
All these spots.
Yeah, and so actually, my sister is a phenomenal writer.
She's great.
She's an author. She's written a couple books now. And so at the time, she was just moving back from England, where she'd been teaching school, sixth form college in Cambridge, and she was kind of in a transition phase. And so I was like, "Hey, Rachel, do you want to write the script for our TV show?"
Keeping it in the family.
I think you see, there's a big part of that with this whole thing.
There is.
There's a whole family vibe to the whole thing. Is that, why hire somebody from way outside if you know somebody that knows somebody? Mm-hmm. And so, anyways, this Ryan guy, who's at our office in the Hollywood Hills, who's a British guy from Manchester, he is being asked. Well, I think that's what happened, right? Shane had said to Ryan, "Do we know anybody that can go and be our location scout?"
And Ryan was like, "I know a guy."
Who was that guy, Sam?
It was me. It was me. An 18-year-old from Canada a traveler which he met in Australia. So backing it up a little bit.
Wow. So we got China, we got the United States, we got Canada, we got England.
Yep.
We got all of this, and now we're entering Australia.
In Australia, I was 18 at the time, just graduated high school, didn't know what I wanted to do. So me and my girlfriend at the time, we said, hey, let's go to Australia. Let's go to New Zealand. Let's go to the Cook Islands. Let's have a good time. So we did that. We jumped on a plane, landed in Australia, and checked into this youth hostel. And on the first day, I met Ryan and his girlfriend at the time, Emma. And we just all connected, had a great time, partied and adventured through Cairns and had a wonderful experience. Unfortunately, they had a van, but they were traveling north. And my girlfriend and I we were traveling south. So we had to part ways. I didn't have a cell phone. I had no way of kind of getting in contact with them at all. So it was a bit of a bittersweet thing, hoping we'd cross paths one day. And I was about halfway down the coast about a few weeks later. And I was like, let's go to an internet cafe and see if we can connect with Ryan and Emma. And so we're walking down the street to go to the internet cafe. And all of a sudden this van passes us and stops. And pop out Ryan and Emma.
That's
just
so wild.
Completely randomly.
Random.
They were driving past the town. They saw us in their rearview mirror and stopped. And, we all celebrated. We went to like a pub, got some cider.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
It was insane. Like they popped out. We're like, holy crap. Like we haven't seen.
What are the odds of that?
I don't know. It was insane. We were so elated And on that day, they invited us to travel down the rest of the coast of Australia with them. And we did that for about a month and a bit and build a real cool friendship. And then,
You were on the road with him for that long?
yeah, it was awesome. It was so much fun. And I loved those two. They were just became like two of my closest friends at the time. And then they had to leave to China. And so we had our goodbyes in Sydney, and Ryan and Emma flew up to China, and lo and behold, met Brian, who then hired Ryan to fly to LA to work on this production. And at the time I was done my travels, I still didn't know what to do. I was still kind of like, I'm not too sure what career I want to go into. So I just did general studies at my local college, VIU, Vancouver Island University. And I got a call from Ryan about halfway through my studies of the first year. And he said, hey, what you up to? I'm like, oh, going to school. He's like, cool, I got this job for you. You want to be a location scout for this production in LA? I'm like, absolutely. So I dropped out of school and flew down. And the rest was history. I have had no experience as a location scout. I have no idea why he was the person I thought of, but I'm very grateful because he changed the course of my life.
In a huge way.
In a very big way. And that whole production experience to this day, I mean, we've had some pretty incredible work experiences, but being an 18-year-old kid driving up to the Hollywood Hills for the first time and just walking into this big mansion and this huge production with these awesome people. Rachel was the first person I met.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just so overwhelming. Like, yeah, imposter syndrome for sure, like you mentioned before, but it was just such I know there were some shady things happening and maybe not shady, but toxic things that were happening, but I was kind of oblivious to. But
Yeah.
I'm very glad I was oblivious at that time because it was such a positive experience for me. So I remember we talked about the last podcast, you know, how there wasn't a dry eye in that room when we got the news that the production was shut down. I remember being just very grateful for the opportunity, and I was trying to like make people happy and like, guys, we were here, we did it. You know, wasn't that's such a great journey?
Hype man Sam.
I was trying because like I was very grateful at that time because it was the best thing that's ever happened to me career wise as an 18-year-old. So
Yeah, but what was crazy is that I was a naysayer. I remember the day I saw you, and it was that I think Rachel and Shane were talking to you. That's at least what my memory says. Yep. And like near the front of the door, and I saw this guy, and I was like, okay, he looks like he's about 12 years old. And Shane was like, yeah, I've hired him to go and be our location scout, sending him across the country. I was like, I think that's a bad idea. I was like, he doesn't have any experience. He isn't this, he isn't that. You know,
He's ever been to America?
never been to America. If I was in anyone's position hiring, I would not hire me.
Yeah, no. To this day, I'm shocked that Shane had the foresight that he knew that Sam Norcutt was
Or
going to
he
be
was
Sam
desperate.
Norcutt.
Maybe Shane was desperate.
I don't know, man, because I had told him, like, I was like, hire my cousin. She's going to be awesome,
Yeah.
right? And
He was probably like, we get Sam for a lot cheaper.
yeah, but
$1 strong in Canada.
And so Shane actually hands Sam, like, Ford had given us like 3 different cars, I think,
Star cars.
to use for the production. And so Shane gave Sam one of the cars, a Ford Edge, a brand new car, like 3,000 or 4,000 in cash, I don't
Around
know,
that.
and like a bag of cash, and says, here's a camera, here's cash, here's a car, go drive from here to Key West, here's all the different cities I want you to go to, and go and take all these photos at these places. And, you know, let Sam tell the story of what that was like. But the crazy thing is Sam comes back from that trip and his photos were stunning. They were perfect. They weren't just perfect. They were like way better than we could have ever hoped for. They were perfect location scout photos. And so Shane's foresight in like being like, oh, this guy's going to do a good job. He went above and beyond. And because Sam is who Sam is, he didn't just come back with the car in perfect shape and with great photos, but he came back and was like, here's all the money back that I didn't spend because I slept in the car most nights instead of getting hotels. And that to me was the first story I really heard about Sam, was that he had returned the money that was given to him to go and spend on food and hotels and travel and everything to go from here to Key West. I mean, who does that? And so I remember hearing that there was this Canadian guy from Vancouver Island who came back with the best photos ever and actually gave the money back from driving across. And I never forgot that. And so it was that experience, and then Collin experience, it kind of formed this initial foundation, like Sam and Collin both, prepped to come over to India to help with everything that was going on over there. And just those kinds of early things kind of built this foundation of trust, I guess.
Yeah.
Of
big time
experiences, of common experience, of going through the fires, together. But that's how I met Sam and Collin.
Yeah, and I met Collin, of course, at the production house. And we didn't really work in the same department, but we spent most of our evenings eating calzones. And
Yeah, well, we were the closest really in age, more or less. I mean, I was kind of the youngest of everyone that was there before you got there. I'm pretty sure that was the case. I think I was 24 at the time, and then you came in, and I was like, I think he's a sophomore in high school. I wasn't sure, but then I just saw that you were like really just positive, uplifted dude who just was like very easily entertained and amused. And I thought, okay, I can mess around with this kid. Like we could have a good time. We could have fun doing whatever it is that we're doing. And so, you came in, you assimilated quickly. I mean, who am I? I had just gotten there too, but it felt like we all coalesced very quickly, very easily.
We did.
And then we made sure to just enjoy the ride while we were there. It was a weird, I felt like, if looking back, I'm like, man, we really did stop and smell the roses, which I think was, is something that people don't do often enough. And we were like pinching ourselves that whole time, being like, wait a second, look at where we are. Look at this view. Look at this business. Look at what is coming. If this all goes right, it's job security for as long as we can imagine. I mean, there's just all these amazing positive implications that could have come from it. And I think that bonded us too. And then when it all went away very quickly, that bonded us even further, because it was like soldiers in war. You experience such a crazy, harsh trauma, and suddenly you're bonded even more significantly to each other. And then that kept us wanting over. Okay, so that was 2013. It wasn't until 2017 when we filmed the pilot the way we always meant to, and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4 years that kept us all in touch. That was the thing that foundation all brought us back, because we had parted ways physically, geographically, but we would all catch up and talk about the good times and what if we could do it again, but the right way. And then when we ultimately come back together, that's why it was even sweeter that following instance when we actually did the thing, is because we had gone through all that fire early on together. And that we knew at that point, we were like, I mean, I speak for me, but I probably speak for you guys. It's like, I don't want to settle for anything less than how incredible of an experience that was in 2012, 13. So everything in comparison to that experience after that experience was just not hitting the dopamine like that did.
Yeah.
So what do we got to do to get back to that level?
Totally.
And I feel like we're finally kind of almost there.
I think so.
I feel like we are there.
We may not realize it, but we are.
Yeah. It's not quite the grandiose way that we did before.
Sure.
But it's got a lot more upside than it ever
We're
had
leaner.
before.
That I mean, look, you when you're younger, there's going to be a wastefulness that just comes with trial and error. Right?
Yeah.
We didn't have anyone going through and analyzing this, that, and the other, and like knowing, okay, maybe we should get rid of this, or we should slim down that, or do this. Like, we're really lean and mean right now,
And Sixtus was way more ambitious of a project,
and way
than
more
Mint.
ambitious. So we thought we had to add on all of these things in order to make it.
Yeah, whenever anybody's like, "Oh, you're starting this company, Mint, isn't going to be challenging? Isn't it? Aren't there going to be all these unforeseen problems?" And I'm like, after starting a television show filmed in the States for broadcast in China, with all these different moving pieces,
The first of its kind. Yeah.
Filmed all across the country, Mint is going to be a piece of cake, and it's quite true. Like, when I compare what we've done over the last 3 years to what that was like, this has been so much better in every possible way.
There's been problems, there's been complexities, but it's nothing in comparison.
Yeah, well, Sixtus required, there was just so much I mean, it was when you don't have a roadmap, like with Mint, what we're doing, at least you can kind of fall upon other people for advice, right? You can go to mechanical engineers, industrial designers, people helping you with shipping or fulfillment. So there's always somebody you can ask questions to. But with Sixtus, I had no one to ask questions to.
And you were younger, and you didn't have the experience that you do now. Now,
well, that's probably the biggest part is, after you've been through the fires of Mordor, you have that experience and you learn about, like, I made so many mistakes at Sixtus. When I really look back, man, I really messed a lot of things up.
Not to mention that project was a film. I mean, a television
Media,
show,
yeah.
and media. So you're also having to deal with, okay, you check all the boxes for the business. You think you're doing all the right things, but then if it doesn't align with the tastes of the people who are gonna back your show, that's when the subjectiveness comes into it and the artistic angle. And now you're like, I did everything I was supposed to do. But if someone doesn't like it, someone doesn't like it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's true with products too, which we're doing too. But at least for us, we've been able to do a lot of testing and
course correction
and share a bit and then course correct. And there's been a more of a kind of concrete path to success, whereas that was a way more abstract.
Yeah. So it's so funny. All of a sudden I'm like, it spawned just like 5 more stories,
of course,
or 10 different kind of aspects of, blah, 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 blah. But, the main thing I wanted to share with everyone today was that you never know where life's going to lead you. That you never know how a single meeting in a single place with a single person can completely change your life. These 2 guys, Collin and Sam, I don't know of any more impactful kind of non-family relationships than I've ever had than these 2 guys. And so those moments of meeting Alex and Ryan in that youth hostel back in Beijing in March of 2012 had such huge ramifications. Mint would not be where it is without these 2 guys. And, our success and where this thing is all headed would not remotely be in that place without them. And also my life would just, forget the work stuff, my life as far as, who I am and how I've grown and, the support network that I've gotten from these 2 guys over the last, 12 years has been just hard to get across. And so you never know how life's going to change in a single moment. And so that's the story of how I met Sam and Collin. And that's why we're all sitting here on a couch in Huntington Beach, California. Guy from New Jersey, guy from Vancouver Island. And I guess I'm from everywhere as a military brat. But, that's what brought us all to be sitting here on this couch today.
Yeah, kind of awesome.
Cool. There's
Wouldn't
so
change
much
it.
in there. There's so much that you touched on that brings back so many cool and strange memories, and just more reason for us to make this into a film one day. I think it's just going to be a really cathartic experience for us, and it's going to be really rewarding.
Mm-hmm. I
think people would like to see it. I mean, like I said, I've talked to people. I've lived in LA for a little while, right? And I have friends in the industry and been able to share aspects of what we've gone through and versions of what you just shared. And it's really the general consensus is this will make for a great piece of entertainment.
Can't wait to watch it.
Who's playing you in the movie, Brian?
Ed Burns. Ed Burns isn't an A-lister by any means. But if you look him up, you definitely, he's like that guy, you've seen him in something. And I don't think anybody looks as much like Brian as Mr. Ed Burns.
Ed Burns.
The other ones I get are Jeremy Piven. I get the Justin Verlander.
Nope.
Obviously, they're not. Verlander's not going to be acting, but who's going to be playing you, Sam?
Oh, I'm probably going to just call some random Canadian and just give him the part.
No.
You
said
Elijah,
earlier.
Elijah Wood. No?
You said earlier. You said Dave Franco.
Dave Franco.
Dave Franco.
Yeah.
No. Sam is a mix of Harry Styles and wait. I can't remember the other one, but anyways, and Collin's going to be played by that guy you just mentioned.
Oh, Glenn Powell.
Glenn
Mr.
Powell.
Twisters.
Yeah. Glenn Powell.
Cool.
It was up for debate once Glenn Powell got real famous the last year, it's Glenn Powell.
Done. Anyways, thanks everybody for listening / watching Car Policy. Hit us up with your questions.
Car Policy out.
Peace out.